If your car has 150,000 miles, the oil choice starts feeling way bigger than it should. You're not just buying 5W30. You're thinking, am I helping this engine or poking the bear? And Valvoline Restore and Protect is one of those oils that makes people argue. So yeah, the question is exactly what it sounds like. If your car has 150k miles, should you use Valvoline? Before we get too far, let's keep it simple. What Valvoline is claiming, why people fight about it, and what actually makes sense for a high-mileage daily driver. Restore and Protect isn't a flush. It's not a bottle of mystery solvent. It's a full synthetic motor oil you run like normal oil. The big hook on Valvoline's official product page is the piston deposit claim. With continuous use, it can remove up to 100% of piston deposits and help prevent new deposits. The important part is continuous use, because they're not saying one oil change turns your engine into a brand new showroom motor. They tie it to multiple normal intervals, basically 4 or more consecutive oil changes, and they point to industry-style testing, context think, and adapted sequence ITHR-type piston deposit framework, where oils get compared under controlled conditions. Real engines vary. Driving habits vary. Maintenance history varies. That's not a dodge, that's just how engines are. If you look at major retailer listings, Walmart, AutoZone, the usual spots, you'll also see it described as meeting API-SP and ALSAC GF6A. That matters because those standards aren't just stickers. API-SP and ALSAC GF6A are built around modern problems like high temp deposits, timing chain wear in certain designs, and LSPI risk in turbo direct injected engines. Meeting those specs doesn't automatically mean it's the best oil, but it does mean it's a modern oil built to play by modern rules. So why does 150k miles make this conversation spicy? Because at that mileage, the same symptom can come from totally different causes, and everyone calls it old engine stuff. Take oil consumption. One car is burning oil because rings and cylinder walls are worn. Another car is burning oil because the rings are fine but they're stuck. Same symptom, totally different story. Ring sticking is a big deal in this debate. Your piston has rings that need to move freely in their grooves, especially the oil control ring that scrapes oil off the cylinder wall. Deposits can build up in those grooves. When that happens, the ring can't do its job well, and oil starts slipping past and getting burned. That's not the engine is dead. That's the engine is dirty in the wrong place. And that's the kind of problem a cleaning-focused oil is aiming at. Here's the thing, though. If your engine is consuming oil because of real wear oval cylinders, tired valve stem seals, a turbo seal leak, something mechanical, no motor oil is going to reverse worn metal. You can't unwear parts with detergent. That's where disappointment stories come from. People hear restore, think repair, and then get mad when it doesn't perform miracles. So you've got 3 layers to the whole restore and protect conversation, even if nobody says it like that out loud. First is the brand message. This oil helps clean piston deposits over time. Second is the community argument. Is that claim real? And is it safe for a high mileage engine? Third is the practical conclusion. Okay, what do I do with my actual car that has 150k miles and needs to get me to work Monday? The community argument is where the noise is. If you've ever scrolled Bob is the Oil Guy, you've seen it. Some people love the idea because it's one of the few shelf oils that talks directly about piston deposits and ring issues instead of just tossing around vague words. Other people hear marketing and immediately go, sure, okay. And then there's the group that doesn't care about the claim either way. They're worried about the oil filter. That filter anxiety usually sounds like this. If it's cleaning, where does the gunk go? Doesn't it clog the filter? Should I change the filter early? That's not a dumb question. Filters exist for a reason. And if your car is new to you, you might be picturing 50k miles of sludge breaking loose all at once. Hang on to that fear for a second, because this is where the answer actually gets useful. Valvoline's product descriptions and FAQs basically say the cleaning action breaks deposits down into microscopic material that stays suspended in the oil and leaves at the next drain, and they say it won't harm filter performance or filter life. That lines up with how modern detergent and dispersant packages are designed to work. Keep contaminants from clumping up and settling where you don't want them. But that's where it gets tricky. A reasonably maintained engine and a neglected engine are 2 different planets. In a maintained engine, you're mostly dealing with gradual deposit control stuff being kept in check and slowly improved over time. In a neglected engine, you can have real sludge, thick varnish, and chunky junk in places you don't want chunky junk moving around. So the early filter change question isn't really about whether restore and protect is too strong. It's about how much you trust the engine's past. If you've owned the car for a long time, and it's had normal oil changes, maybe not perfect, but not crazy thin, running restore and protect on a normal interval with a decent filter is a pretty reasonable move. The whole pitch is that it's safe for regular use and works gradually across multiple intervals. If you just bought the car, or you have reasons to suspect the oil changes were stretched forever, then doing an early filter change can be a calm, practical middle ground. Not panic. Not the oil is dangerous. Just uncertainty management. You'll see people on forums suggest swapping the filter at something like 1,000 to 2,500 miles, topping off the oil you lose, then continuing to run the same oil to your normal drain point. That's cheap peace of mind if you're the kind of person who will otherwise spend 2 weeks listening for doom. So pick a side on this because it's the easiest way to see where people land. Early filter change, yes or no? Now, oil consumption isn't the only thing people notice after switching oils. Cold start noise comes up a lot. Somebody changes oil and suddenly the engine sounds different in the morning, and they start replaying that sound in their head all day. Real talk. Sometimes it's the oil, sometimes it's the filter, and sometimes it's just you noticing things because you changed something. Different oils can behave slightly differently at startup even if they're the same viscosity grade, because the base oil mix and additive package can change how quickly pressure builds and how the oil clings to surfaces overnight. Filters matter too, because the anti-drainback valve is what keeps oil from draining out of the filter when the car sits. If that valve doesn't seal well, you can get a brief rattle or ticking while the filter refills and pressure stabilizes. So if you switch to Restore and Protect and you get a little extra startup noise, don't jump straight to "it's harming my engine." Check the basics first. Correct viscosity for your manual, correct oil level on the dipstick, and a filter that has a good reputation for your engine. Some engines are picky about filter design, and people blame the oil, when the filter is the real change that matters. And while we're talking basics, oil level is the big one at 150K. If your engine consumes oil, the most important oil strategy isn't a brand. It's checking the dipstick and topping off. Running low is what turns normal wear into expensive wear. Back to the cleaning claim, because that's why anyone considers this oil in the first place. Cleaning in motor oil doesn't mean it's pressure washing your engine. It means detergents and dispersants are working to prevent deposits, keep contaminants suspended, and slowly reduce certain types of buildup over multiple normal intervals. Valvoline is saying Restore and Protect is tuned specifically to target piston deposits, and that matters because piston deposits are tied into ring function and oil consumption in a way that, say, a super clean-looking valve cover isn't. That's the part that gets missed. People talk about cleaning like it's one thing, but the location matters. The shiny top end doesn't guarantee the oil control rings are happy, and the oil control rings are where a lot of consumption drama lives. What do owners report? All over the map, and that's honestly what you should expect. Some people say consumption improves after a couple of oil changes. Some say it takes a few intervals to notice anything. Some say nothing changes at all. All three stories can be true. If deposits were a major part of the problem, a gradual clean might help. If the problem is wear or a mechanical leak path, it probably won't. Also, sometimes switching oils changes consumption just because the engine reacts differently. If you go from a thicker oil to the correct thinner spec, a worn engine might burn a little more. If you go from a random bargain oil to a quality synthetic, sometimes consumption stabilizes. Sometimes it doesn't. It's messy, because engines are messy. One more thing worth saying out loud. Oil consumption can be deposit related, but it can also be PCV related. A crankcase ventilation system that's not working right can pull oil vapor into the intake. That's not the oil's fault, and no oil fixes a stuck PCV valve. So if you're burning a quart every 800 miles, it's smart to look at the full picture. Leaks, PCV, smoke on startup, smoke under load, and how the plugs look. A lot of mechanics on popular automotive YouTube channels repeat the same theme. Diagnose the engine, don't just swap fluids and hope. Okay, quick question in the middle here because I'm genuinely curious and it helps everyone sorting through the noise. If you've used Restore and Protect on a higher mileage daily, what was it exactly? Vehicle, engine, mileage, oil change interval, and filter brand. And did you notice any change in consumption or cold start sound after a couple changes? Or did it feel basically identical? Now let's talk expectations, because this is where people get themselves into trouble. If you try Restore and Protect, the smartest way to do it is boring. Run it for a normal interval that matches your reality. If your car has unknown history, shorter intervals at first make sense. If your car has a clean, known history, a normal interval makes sense. And if your engine is a burner, don't stretch intervals just because the bottle is fancy. Keep it reasonable, keep it topped off, and give it time. Time matters because Valvoline's claim is tied to repeated use. One oil change is usually not enough to tell you anything unless the engine was already on the edge. 2 to 4 consecutive changes is where the gradual part has a chance to show up. That doesn't mean you'll get a dramatic shift. It means you're giving the approach a fair shot. Now, some folks ask, why not just use a high mileage oil instead? Totally fair. High-mileage oils often focus on seal conditioning and an additive balance that's friendly to older engines that seep oil or sweat around gaskets. Valvoline's Max Life High Mileage is a known option for that, and other brands have their own versions. Restore and Protect is more about deposit control and that piston deposit angle. So if your main problem is wet seals and driveway spots, a high-mileage formula might be your first stop. If your main problem is consumption that feels like it could be ring sticking, Restore and Protect is the one that's trying to speak to that problem. And if your main problem is, I just want a solid modern synthetic that meets API-SP and ALSAC GF6A, Restore and Protect still lives in that world. It's not often some weird corner. It's a normal oil with a specific focus. One more practical detail. Some people care a lot about specific manufacturer approvals, like Dexos for certain GM vehicles, because it's printed in the manual, and it's what they're used to buying. Restore and Protect isn't marketed as Dexos certified. For a lot of 150k mile cars, warranty isn't the issue anymore, but the spec question still matters if you're strict about what your manual calls for. So just make sure you're okay with what the bottle actually lists for your engine and your comfort level. So should you use Valvoline Restore and Protect if your car has 150k miles? Yeah, it can make sense, especially if oil consumption is creeping up and you suspect deposits might be part of the story. You're not pouring in a flush. You're choosing a modern synthetic that's leaning into piston deposit control and asking you to judge it over multiple normal intervals. That's a reasonable plan for a high-mileage daily driver. But it's not a repair. If the engine is mechanically worn out, or you've got a serious leak, or there's a hardware issue like a bad PCV system or failing seals, oil isn't going to save you. In those cases, Restore and Protect might still be a perfectly fine oil, but it won't be the fix you're looking for. And the controversy question the filter thing doesn't need to be scary. If the engine has been maintained, run a good filter and a normal interval. If the engine history is a mystery and you're uneasy, an early filter change is a practical choice, not a superstition. I'll ask one more time near the end because I know people have strong opinions on this and I want the real details. If you've run Restore and Protect on a 150k plus car, what were you driving, what engine, what mileage, what interval, and what filter brand? And did you do the early filter swap or run it straight through? Also, early filter change yes or no. My decision is pretty simple. For a 150k mile car, Restore and Protect is a fair yes if you match the right viscosity, keep expectations realistic, and actually commit to a few normal oil changes so the cleaning claim has a chance to matter. If you're expecting instant results, you're setting yourself up to be annoyed. If you treat it like steady maintenance, it's a reasonable move. The filter side of the story is a whole rabbit hole bypass settings, anti-drainback